My true story from Tennessee. They thought I'd left for good, but when I returned for the will, I overheard my son and his wife whispering, "If she dies before Tuesday, we get everything." They didn't know I was still standing in the hallway. I didn't cry. I called my lawyer. I stepped through the front door without knocking, the old wooden floorboards creaking under my weight, and frozen in place when I heard Rachel's voice cut through the dim hallway like a razor. "There's no handrail on those stairs. If you step wrong today, things will get a lot easier for us." Her tone was cold, dismissive, as if she were talking about a broken chair, not her mother-in-law. I didn't answer. I had returned today to collect a few belongings I'd left behind, my savings ledger, a family photo album, the locket my husband gave me the night Jake was born, and to face them. I had signed the papers under pressure. They had said it was for my safety, that I would be much more comfortable in the senior living facility. I had walked away that day quietly, but not defeated. I still owned this house, and I was coming home. I paused halfway through the hallway when Jaken's voice slid through the shadows, low, chilling. "They say she's too weak to protest," he whispered. "But I say weakness is opportunity." Every word felt like a blow to my chest, but I forced myself to breathe steadily. My hands clutched the cane tightly. I climbed the stairs, one measured step at a time. Each creak beneath my foot echoed hatred and resolve. My breath quickened, even as rage fertilizer my calm. I reached the fourth step and heard her again, Rachel sharpening the knife with her words. "If she dies before Tuesday, probate will go through cleanly. No red flags." Yakin's quiet laugh followed. "Clean and fast. House, lake property, investments, ours." The clink of their wine glasses cut through the silence. They celebrated my end like it was a cliché they'd rehearsed. I stood motionless at the top of the stairs. Their voices carried clearly into the living room. As I watched them from the archway, Jaken leaned back in the velvet armchair, Rachel perched on the couch with her glass raised. My reflection shimmered faintly in the chandelier light above them. The air smelled of polish and lies. Behind me, the hallway was dark and cold, a reminder of everything I had endured. Days of gentle coercion, evenings coerced into silence, moments when I doubted my own strength. But now I was here. Now I knew I held the upper hand. I reached into my coat pocket, my fingers brushing a small recorder. I had hidden it before I left the nursing home, expecting I might need proof of their betrayal. I pressed play. Their words returned, amplified in the hush of the house. The stairs, weakness, before Tuesday, clean. Each phrase a confession, a vow. Rachel stiffened. Jaken's glass clattered onto a side table. Their heads snapped toward the stairs. Their triumphant expressions vanished, replaced with shock, then fear. I descended another slow step, the recorder dangling between us like a detonator. "I didn't fall for your story," I said softly. My voice was low, calm, but carried all the force of every lonely night they had forced me into silence. "I'm still standing here. I called my lawyer from the car. He's on his way." Their faces turned ashen. I took 2 more steps. The recorder beeped its red light at me. My heart hammered, but my voice remained steady. "I know what you planned." I turned the recorder slightly so its light caught Rachel's eye. "I want my things. I want out. And I want you to know that no one is above the law." Rachel blinked, unable to speak. Jaken's jaw tightened, his hands shaking. I didn't say another word. I turned and walked back the way I had come. Their silent shock followed me. I passed the stairs again, pausing at the landing to look down at them. Their eyes were fixed on me, cheated, humiliated, exposed. I held their gaze. Then I walked out. They thought the stairs would be the end for me. They were wrong. Let them live with today's silence. Let them remember my footsteps. Let them wonder what came next. I made the call before I even reached the porch. My lawyer answered on the first ring. I gave him the only instruction that mattered. I want to put everything in a trust, irrevocable, airtight, and effective immediately. No emotion, no explanation, just action. By sundown that day, the legal gears had turned. My assets, savings, properties, everything I had ever earned were no longer in my name. They now lived under a protective shell built on foresight and betrayal. But legal strategy alone would not save me. I needed proof, undeniable, raw, documented. That night, I returned to the house. I parked 2 streets away. My heart thudded so loud I thought it might echo down the quiet neighborhood. In my coat pocket, wrapped in an old handkerchief, was the smallest camera money could buy. It looked like a button. I had learned more about surveillance in 1 week than most people learn in a lifetime. I slipped into the backyard. The wind smelled like mulch and malice. I crouched near the orchid pot by the window. That orchid had bloomed every year since my husband planted it. It was the only thing in that home that never lied to me. My fingers trembled as I unwrapped the camera and secured it to the stem. A red dot blinked once, then settled. A red dot blinked once, then settled. I had audio, I had video, and I had a reason. Inside, I heard Rachel's voice drift from the kitchen. "You think the old witch suspects anything?" Her tone was sharp, casual, as if she were talking about a stain on the rug. "She probably forgot what day it is," Jakin responded with a snort. "She always clung to that stupid rose bush like it was her will to live. Well, now it can bloom at her funeral." I clenched my teeth, breathed in through my nose. Then I moved. I slipped through the back door like I had 1,000 times before. The house looked the same, but colder, like it knew it no longer belonged to me. I passed the hall mirror. My reflection stared back at me, with a mix of sadness and steel. I walked into the living room, paused at the mantel, and gently removed their wedding photo from the frame. I taped another camera behind the frame, careful not to disturb the dust pattern. Upstairs, I placed one more device, just beneath the vent in the hallway outside their bedroom. I would know what they whispered when they thought the world was asleep. When I was done, I walked outside and stood beneath the porch light for a moment. My body shook, not from fear, but from the release of something I had held too long. I was not a victim. I was the architect of my own revenge. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again. He looked at me like he had seen a ghost dressed in silk. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" he asked. "Once we move the assets, there's no undoing it." I smiled. "That's the point." We finalized the documents. Everything was now in a charitable trust called Rose's Hope. The name was mine, but the mission was for every woman who had been dismissed, diminished, or nearly erased by those they raised. In the days that followed, I began to read. I studied elder law, guardianship clauses, power of attorney. I signed up for swimming lessons at the local YMCA. I walked every morning, ate blueberries, memorized poems. They had said I was weak, so I got stronger. They had said I was forgetful, so I remembered everything. They had said I was old. They were right. But old did not mean done. Old did not mean gone. Old meant I had survived, and I had the receipts to prove it. Rachel's insurance fraud? I found the file. Her mother's account had been drained shortly after a suspicious fall at the clinic. The documents were buried deep in a folder titled Miscellaneous. It was neither misfiled nor misunderstood. It was deliberate. Jakin's manipulation of my bank accounts? I found the forged signature, my name, twisted and shaky, on a check dated the week I had my cataract surgery. I never signed that check, but he did. That night, I sat in my new apartment, sipping chamomile tea, watching the camera feeds flicker on my laptop. I watched them toast again. I watched them laugh. I watched them search the drawers for my jewelry, my documents, my obituary that had yet to be written. And I said to the screen quietly, "You think I am blind, but I see. You think I am deaf, but I hear. And this time, I am recording everything." I arrived at the house just as the sun dipped below the rooftops, painting long orange shadows across the front porch. The reconciliation birthday party had been pitched as a celebration of life, a moment to heal old wounds, to show gratitude for the years I had lived and loved. Close cousins, old neighbors, even my high school friends stood in clusters on the manicured lawn, champagne flutes in hand, lighting candles that flickered like hopeful beacons ahead of the night. My heart ached with how far I had traveled from trusting gentle words to knowing they meant something darker. They ushered me toward the Rose Arch, where a banner read, "Happy Birthday, Mom." I felt their smiles, tightly wound like rubber bands on the brink of snapping. Rachel draped an arm around my shoulders, her hand light, trembling, nervous as a surgeon's blade. "We're so glad you came," she told me. My voice stayed steady. "It's only right I join you tonight." I drank in the faces, my niece's bright grin, my nephew's respectful nod, the furrowed crowds who barely recognized the smiling matron their mother had forced away. The candles glowed until dusk fell. A small cake bearing my name was wheeled from the kitchen. The murmurs turned into polite applause. I sank into my chair, draped my shawl, and offered soft thanks. Inside my pocket, my phone buzzed, my lawyer confirming he had the files ready. The tension beneath my skin steadied. Now. They lined up to speak. Aunt Marjorie gave a toast to health and unity. Uncle Frank offered condolences for my rough few months. Their words came off rehearsed. I realized they believed the press releases the lie that I had left voluntarily. I didn't say anything. Then came the moment I had been both dreading and crafting. To speak. I stood and asked everyone to listen. The chatter dimmed into a hush. I held out my phone and hit play. At first, nothing. A soft hum of the amp, murmurs over glasses. Then their voices poked through. Jakin's low confidence, Rachel's cruel whispers, the toast to my early death. The words in that audio filled the silent lawn like an icy wave. A slow ripple moved through the crowd, shifting expressions from confusion to shock to betrayal. I closed my eyes for a moment, tasting victory and sorrow. My voice came soft, but every word cut deep. "These are the words you spoke when you thought I was far away. You toasted to my death, not because you were sad." I heard celebration. The silence under the stars felt so thick it might suffocate them. Rachel's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with regret. Jakin stood rigid, jaw clenched, turning pale under the garden lights. My family blinked at the screen. Some covered their mouths, others stared at me like a stranger who had murdered the memory of their family matriarch. The host, my daughter's old friend, reluctant but loyal, stepped forward, face glistening. I could see the questions in his eyes. Was it true? The recorder spun its loop of damning truth again. I watched each reaction: grief, guilt, disbelief, shame. And then I spoke again. "I never wanted this. I came back to be your mother, not your enemy. But I will not be killed twice, once by age and once by your hands." Their silence said more than any apology could. I felt tears burn behind my eyes, not sorrow for them, but for what they lost, for what I could not reclaim. Their betrayal was naked, my resolve was bright. I pressed stop. The recorder clicked off, and I locked eyes with Rachel and Jakin. Their breaths were shallow. The candles flickered. Somewhere a bird called into the night. I said softly, "This ends tonight. I will never be referred to as the old lady who slipped. I am alive." The tension broke. My cousin whispered, "Mom, But I shook my head. There is nothing more to say. The next steps are legal. My voice was final. We sat in the garden under blankets of flowers, my back straight, still powerful. The party was over. The night air cooled, my heart pounded, not with fear, but fierce triumph. I had not yelled. I had not attacked. I had revealed the truth, and the truth had stood like an avalanche, irreversible. Their disgrace was complete. My vindication was silent but unmistakable. And so, under the watchful eyes of my wounded but unwavering family, I took my first steps toward freedom once more. The morning after the birthday debacle brought cold clarity. At sunrise, 2 uniformed sheriffs appeared at my front door, and behind them stood my lawyer, silent but determined. My living room felt hollow as they took seats just as we had left them, velvet cushions still bearing faint stains of celebration and betrayal. The lawyer cleared his throat, and one of the officers leaned forward, a gentle yet unwavering presence. "Mrs. Thompson, we're here to take statements and review evidence," he said. My heart thudded, but not with fear. This was what I had set in motion. I nodded once and signaled the lawyer. Afterward, I handed over the recorder. They listened again to Rachel's voice toasting my death, and Jakin's cold, equal nod. We replayed the holiday conspiracies, the mention of medication, clean probate, and Tuesday's timeline. My hands remained steady. Then came the footage. I directed them to the Orchid camera, where the video revealed Rachel rifling through pill bottles in my medicine cabinet late at night. Her silhouette was clear enough, fumbling with bottles, inspecting labels. The detective took note, jotting quietly in his notebook. "We'll need to confirm if any sedatives were accessed," he said. I nodded, hands clasped over my heart, steady and calm. Next, I brought out the bedroom hallway feed. There, under the vent, hidden and dim, I watched them, late one evening, whispering again of scheduling and liquid doses. The lawyer stepped forward, papers in hand, the new trust documentation. Each property, each bank account, each asset had been transferred into an irrevocable trust under the name Rose's Hope. He explained clearly to the officers, "Nothing can be reversed. This is airtight." The trust document was signed, notarized, and legally sound. The trust designation named me as the only beneficiary and trustee, giving me complete legal authority over my estate. The officer nodded respectfully toward me and cleared his throat. "Mrs. Thompson, this helps confirm that no financial motive remains now. But the recordings suggest intent. We will proceed with charges of elder abuse, attempted harm, insurance fraud, and possible pharmaceutical tampering." My breath caught, but I did not flinch. Then Kelly, the aide from the nursing home, arrived, bearing her ID and her own copy of a medical evaluation. She told the detectives how Rachel had pressed her to sign an updated medical form, asserting I was incompetent, citing unspecified memory issues and increased fall risk. Kelly looked shaken. Her voice wavered as she described choking back tears before forging her signature. The prosecuting officer asked her to identify the handwriting and sign again. She did, and the officer placed the paper in evidence. My lawyer slid me a glass of water. I took a steady sip. The detective looked at me kindly. "Mrs. Thompson," he addressed me, "thank you for your cooperation. We will turn all of this over to the district attorney and expect charges to be filed within the week." I exhaled slowly, relief tempered with sorrow. They had betrayed me. The law would hold them accountable. The lawyer leaned down to my ear and whispered, "You did good." I let a small smile touch my lips. The officers packed the evidence, sealing envelopes, labeling files. The visit ended, quiet, methodical, unassailable. I opened the door for them, stepping aside as they left. The lawyer lingered. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're safe now." I nodded. "Yes," I said softly, because I stood up. Then I closed the door and walked to the window. The house was quiet again. No celebration, no plotting, only the steady presence of light filtering onto the polished floorboards. I turned back to the living room, the scene of my birthright reclaimed. It felt mine again, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself a deep breath free of dread. The law had spoken. I had survived. And my truth, unfiltered, unwritten, unstoppable, would stand. The courtroom buzzed like a hive under pressure. Reporters' cameras lined the front row, neighbors whispered in clusters, and the Davis County flag fluttered near the judge's bench as if trembling with anticipation. I sat in the long wooden chair, cane resting against my chair leg, my posture firm and unyielding. Jacob and Rachel stood at the defendant's table, their shoulders slumped, eyes cast down, tethered by the weight of evidence that had unraveled their scheme. When the judge entered, a hush fell. My lawyer leaned in and whispered, "Stay strong. They know." I nodded once. All morning we heard testimony. Kelly from the nursing home, tearfully recalling the coerced incompetency form. The detective, sober and factual, detailing Rachel ransacking my medicine cabinet at midnight. The probate officer, confirming the trust was irrevocable. My bank statements showing forged checks. And the audio and video evidence played for the court, their voices celebrating my demise, their laughter ringing cold. When the prosecution rested, the judge cleared his throat. I felt sunlight from the high window fall on my white hair as I rose to speak. My voice rang out, steady but not harsh. "Your Honor, family should be sanctuary, not a threat," I said. My home became a crime scene. My life was dismissed as a weak old woman. I won't allow age to silence me. I turned my gaze to the front bench where Rachel and Jacob sat, their stares lowering further. They toasted to my death. They called my vulnerability an opportunity. So tonight, if they wanted me gone, they will remember how fiercely I lived. A ripple of emotion passed through the gallery. Neighbors shifted, reporters leaned forward, my voice softened. I am not here for vengeance. I'm here for justice, not just for me, but for every elder whose life is treated like property. I lowered my eyes and sat. 2 hours later, the jury returned. Silence spread like a wave. The judge asked, "Have you reached a verdict?" The plain voice of the forewoman said, "We have, Your Honor." The judge cleared his throat again. "On the charge of elder abuse, guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud and pharmaceutical tampering, guilty." Jacquin's head dropped further. Rachel's face paled. They both slumped as if the verdict weighed more than their bodies could bear. The judge imposed sentences appropriate to the level of their crimes: probation for financial fraud, electronic monitoring for elder abuse, and the possibility of jail time should they violate terms. Cameras flashed. I did not celebrate. I remained still. As the legal documents were handed to my lawyer and the bailiff started to escort them to custody, my mind sank into memory. The day I left for the nursing home, the night I realized the threat, the dawn I exposed the plot, the afternoon we stood in that battered hallway. I thought of every elder woman who had been ignored or abused. This verdict was theirs too. After the session, reporters formed a cluster outside the courtroom. I stepped forward under the cameras. One asked, "How do you feel?" I paused. "Strong," I said softly. Not because they lost, but because age didn't break me. It made me fight. Then I turned toward the courthouse doors, leaving behind the hushed crowd and the glare of flashes. I walked out into the daylight, cane tapping on the steps. I did not rush. I did not falter. I paused halfway down and looked back at the building. Justice, finally. I tucked my lips into a small smile, not of triumph, but of resolve. The reporters' questions faded behind me as I descended the final steps and entered the sunshine. And there, under the open sky, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. I had spoken for myself and for every voice that had been silenced. After the verdict, I felt the world shift under my feet, not in fear, but in freedom. Once I returned home, my lawyer arrived with the final trust documents. Rose's hope, irrevocable and unwavering. We signed in the study where decades of memories slept in dim corners, my signature pressed upon each paper, sealing every asset: bank accounts, that sweet little house, investments, even the dusty cottage by the lake. All of it would support the elderly and orphaned children, those left voiceless or overlooked. It felt like undoing a lifelong mistake, reclaiming purpose from pain. A new kind of legacy began, one built on hope, not inheritance. My lawyer closed the folder, looked up at me, and said, "It's done." My shoulders relaxed for the first time in months. That afternoon I walked to the back of the study, looking out into the small garden I had once tended. Sunlight pooled on new daffodils pushing through tough spring soil. I whispered to them, "Rise," because I had risen. I had survived. The next morning, while I sorted letters and new account statements, I heard footsteps at the front door. At first I thought it was the mailman, or perhaps my lawyer returned. But when I opened the door, I saw Jake, my 10-year-old grandson, holding something in both hands. His eyes were earnest, brave, younger than his years. In his grip was a drawing. Me beneath the rose arch, smiling, roses blooming all around. "Grandma," he said softly, "I wanted to give this to you. Thank you for everything." I pulled him inside and closed the door. My heart ached at how small he looked beside the threshold. I knelt and took the paper, unfolding it slowly. "I know what Mom and Dad did," he said, voice quiet but firm. "I heard some bad things, but I want you to know I will never let you down." Tears swelled behind my eyes. In that moment I understood the truest inheritance I could leave him. A grandmother who fought with dignity. I hugged him tight, feeling his warmth, feeling life move through new blood. "I believe you," I whispered, "and I'll always stand by you." He nodded, eyes bright. Then he held the drawing to my chest like a medal. "Someday, Grandma, I want you to walk me down the aisle," he added, tone hopeful, eyes gleaming. My breath caught. He was 10, 15 years away, but the seed of that moment took root in my heart. I kissed the top of his head. I saw the future through his eyes, a future of second chances, rebuilding broken bonds, and the quiet strength that endures. The day moved into afternoon. I invited him to sit with me in the study as I showed him the new mission of Rose's Hope. He asked smart questions about how the money would help senior centers and foster homes. He pointed to the drawing and added, "I want to help too." My heart swelled. A tear slipped free, but it was not sorrow. It was renewal. Jake stayed for hours, listening to stories from my youth, from when he was born, from the day he called me strongest lady in the world. He drank lemonade under my handcrafted quilt. For the first time in a long time, my house sounded like home. When evening came, I tucked him in with a kiss. He pressed the drawing under his pillow. I lingered by the door, watching him sleep, arms folded, breathing soft and even. I felt peace. That night I sat in the garden, wrapped in a shawl, staring up at the sky. The breeze carried the scent of roses. I thought of my daughters, my friends, and even my children who had betrayed me. But most of all, I thought of Jake, of his promise, of the legacy I hoped to build through him. I whispered into the quiet, "Thank you for believing in me." Because now I could believe in myself. And I realized that sometimes the world's eyes are stranger than your own family's. But those strangers can still see you. They can give you new definitions of family, of worth, of home. I stood, cane in hand, and walked back inside. A new chapter awaited, one of purpose and love, shaped by hope, strengthened by ceremony and community, embraced by a bond with the grandson who carried my strength forward. I had lived for myself again, and through Jake, I lived for tomorrow. Life after the courtroom was a battlefield. The headlines were merciless. Daughter-in-law and son exploitation scandal rocks quiet Tennessee town, one tab read. Family betrayal, elder abuse exposed, screamed another. Our neighbors who once smiled and waved passed me with cold eyes. Invitations stopped arriving. The silence settled like ash. At the center of it all stood Jakin and Rachel, once confident, now hollow shells of entitlement. They had lost everything, their credibility, their home, their social standing. Even their friends turned away. The landlord evicted them from the townhouse, creditors hounded them, the gossip was relentless. My hospital bed had long since left me, but I watched them grapple with consequences like distant gods punishing hubris. Months passed. One afternoon, the defense attorney informed me that Rachel, though free on bail, would attend a procedural hearing. The media would swarm. I knew where she would be, and I chose to go. I sat in the wood-paneled hallway of the courthouse, the scent of cleaning solvent and stale air around me. The television crew shoved microphones into the open door. Cameras flashed through glass, illuminating Rachel's tear-stained face. She entered, clutching her purse, eyes darting. When she saw me in the gallery, makeup smudged and suit wrinkled, she froze. I rose, cane in hand, steady and small. The doors locked behind her. Reporters quieted instantly. The hush was thick, charged. Her face went pale as she recognized the woman she had tried to bury. Seconds stretched, then the doors opened again, and through them marched a shorter, older woman. Her mother, June. She carried herself with brittle dignity, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun. She wore no makeup, only a clean coat and a face weathered by truth. June's gaze locked on Rachel. No anger, no mercy, just heartbreak and resolve. They both approached the cameras. The reporters leaned in, sensing spectacle. June did not look left or right. She fixed her eyes on her daughter. And then she spoke, voice calm but unyielding. "You pushed your husband's mother down the stairs to inherit her will. You used pills and papers and your own child to cover your crimes. You are no longer my daughter." Rachel gasped. The courtroom air vibrated with the force of that sentence. It was the final verdict of a mother's heartbreak. Rachel's knees buckled and she slid down the wall, sobbing. Her professional lawyer stepped forward to guide her back, but she could not budge. She had lost everything. Fatherless, husbandless, motherless. The cameras caught every tremble. I watched quietly, a witness to her collapse. Not triumph, not glee. A quiet sorrow for the child she once loved, but had chosen to betray. The judge finalized paperwork, and the hearing ended without ceremony. People drifted out of the courtroom. I remained, motionless but whole. As the doors swung open, I saw June step past me, glancing once at Rachel before leaving without another word. I watched her go, feeling a pang of recognition, both of what I almost lost and of forces beyond any courtroom's reach. Parental love? The final judge, in a child's moral reckoning. Outside, the reporters swarmed me. Flashing lights followed my cane as I descended the steps. They asked, "How do you feel hearing that from her own mother?" I paused. My voice was soft but steady. It is a mother's responsibility to speak truth, even when it wounds. If her child cannot recognize the line between love and murder, that child must learn that lesson somewhere. A nod. Then I turned and walked away, each step echoing on the marble, carrying the weight of what had been lost and what had finally been set free. In the days that followed, profiles surfaced on June, a woman as composed as she was broken, who had carried shame silently for months until she found her voice. She became a symbol for parents who choose truth over blind loyalty. Our story, intertwined now, spoke of consequences beyond law, moral consequences, familial consequences, and the scars of betrayal that no verdict could erase. Yet somehow hope grew. In the small living room at my temporary apartment, Jake built a Lego castle. He asked about Rachel and Jakin. "Are they okay, Grandma?" I sighed. "They'll be fine, in time," I told him. "But they need to do the hard work of growing up. Truly, of learning that what you do to others echoes back." Jake nodded, his brow furrowed like his grandmother's when she was deep in thought. "I don't think I could do something like that," he said. "I love you too much." My heart ached, not with pain, but with unconditional love, the kind that rebuilds. Jakin's apology came by note, handed to me by a police officer. "I'm sorry." No excuses. I placed it in a drawer. Forgiveness did not mean forgetting. It meant freeing myself. Rachel vanished. No job, no house, no mother to stand beside her. I forgave in silence, for my own peace. In the park, Jake handed me his crumpled drawing. A castle, a garden of roses, and a smiling old woman with a cane. "Justice," he said softly. I held his hand as we walked home, the sun trailing behind like a quiet promise. He carried the future now. At home, I woke with purpose, the lace curtains lit with morning gold. My cane waited, but I no longer feared the stairs. Thank you letters for Rose's Hope Foundation sat on my table, testimonies of what had grown from truth. Downstairs, laughter echoed from the community room. Volunteers gathered, stories and coffee shared beneath signs that read, "Protect our elders." I stepped to the front. They looked at me, not as a victim, but a matriarch reborn. Family, I realized, was not only blood. It was every hand that chose justice when silence was easier. And I smiled. I raised my voice, soft but unwavering. "We are more than survivors. We are witnesses. We will speak, and we will be heard." They clapped softly. My heart wove its new story, one of community and advocacy, not hiding in fear. Days later, my name appeared on a daytime TV show lineup, Heartland Voices. I sat on the soft blue couch, the lights bright but welcoming. Across from me was the host, a kind woman with bright eyes and a gentle tone. She leaned in. "Rose, your story shook this town and this nation. What do you want viewers to know?" I looked into the camera. Silence is not weakness. It can be strategy. But right now we must speak. To every senior, every voice pushed aside. What you endure is not invisible. We must stand, we must document, and we must fight. The audience watched in silence. A video clip from the trial played behind me. The staircase confrontation, the courthouse hearing, the teardrop of Rachel swallowed by judgment. I held my breath as the host asked, "What would you say to someone who worries they're too old to fight?" I smiled. "I would say you are not too old. Age gives you wisdom. Hold on to that. Hold on to your rights." Applause followed. The host leaned forward again. "Rose, you are an inspiration." A tear rolled down my cheek. I nodded. We do not rise from ashes alone. After the show, letters poured in. Emails, calls, donations. People shared similar stories. Threats, betrayals, quiet exclusions. I made sure we had resources ready. Legal referrals, recording devices, self-defense classes, memoir workshops. We turned Rose's hope into a lifeline, not just a fund. That night, as snow dusted the streets of Tennessee, I lit a single candle in my kitchen window, not for mourning, but for memory, for every elder still unheard, for every silence waiting to speak. I sat beside it with a cup of tea and whispered into the quiet, "We're still here." And I knew we always would be. Months turned into years. I turned 76. A local college awarded me an honorary certificate for community advocacy and elder justice. I spoke to students, reminding them, one day, time may shift your perspective. Keep your eyes open. Jake, now 12, watched from the audience, his face alight. I stayed in my home, a small stone bungalow ringed with roses, and each spring I knelt in the dirt to plant new ones. Sometimes I would kneel and press a thumb into the soil, remembering the woman I was before the betrayal, the woman I became after. I realized that healing was not a straight line. It was a circle that turned back on itself, moment by moment, choosing life again. The media interest waned, but the foundation continued. A council formed with elders and young advocates. The local library set aside a section for stories of survivors. The courthouse even posted elder rights pamphlets in the lobby. A small victory, but real. One morning I received an invitation, a family and community celebration, 10 years of Rose's Hope. I recognized the logo and nearly laughed. 10 years. That autumn I turned 80. I wore a soft dress and pearls and walked into a hall filled with rose arrangements and balloons. Old friends, new allies, and neighbors greeted me with applause. Jake, now 15, escorted me to the stage. He wore a suit and shook hands with the mayor before reaching for me. "Grandma," he whispered, "they all came because of you." I took the mic. The room quieted. I paused, letting the moment stretch. "I am not the woman you saw once as weak," I said. "I am the woman who chose to stand, who chose no longer to be invisible, whose silence was her plan, not her prison." Tears glistened in the crowd. I closed with what had become my mantra. Silence is not surrender. Silence can be strategy. And justice may come late, but it will come if we stand together. They rose to their feet. The standing ovation echoed like rolling thunder. I felt the warmth press into my chest. Not like a burden, but like belonging. That night, as I lay in my bed, I held the framed rose drawing, Jake's first $5, 0 cents gift, tucked in a simple frame. I whispered to it, "We made it." And his promise echoed back, "You believed in me, and now I believe in you." I closed my eyes, knowing battles remain, for elders everywhere, but knowing too that hope does not die as long as someone lights the way. I drifted to sleep, dreaming of rose petals and voices rising in unison, a testament to one life reclaimed and a legacy reborn from the rubble. The church bells began to chime as I stepped onto the marble floor, leaning on my cane, but walking with a purpose I had never known at 90 years old. The morning light filtered through the stained glass, painting the aisle with soft colors. A gentle rustle filled the pews as family and friends turned to watch me. Could they see my truth in my trembling hands, or the strength in my steady gaze? I held my breath when I saw him, my grandson, Jake, now 25, tall and confident. He wore a dark suit and tie, a boutonniere of white roses pinned to his lapel. His smile, warm and bright, met me at the altar. He held my arm gently, like a careful, kind companion leading me home. His bride, Liesel, glowed in ivory silk. Her hand rested on his arm. I could say her face was radiant, but it was more, full of hope, trust, a future promised. My heart swelled with gratitude. Only moments before, at the reception, I had given Jake an old rose-shaped locket I found among my things. Inside, the drawing he made 15 years ago, folded and perfect. Jake had smiled, eyes moist, and I thought, he has kept it all these years. Now as I walked with them down the aisle toward the waiting officiant, I thought of the years that had led here. The betrayal, the courtroom, the stand, the foundation, the fight, the redemption. And I realized that all of it mattered, because this moment mattered most. We reached the altar. The organ played a soft chord. Jake squeezed my hand gently. Liesel's eyes glistened with tears. I remembered the day he was born, first in my arms, quick and bright, and wonder in his grasp. Now here he was, grown, taking a life partner and asking me to guide her, to bless her, to be the grandmother I had fought to remain. The officiant smiled at me. I nodded. Together, our family circle stood before them. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all bearing witness. I gave a gentle nod to Jake, then turned to Lizelle. I placed my hand lightly on her shoulder. "Welcome to our family," I said softly, audible in the hush. Her face shone. She pulled me close for a hug. "Thank you, Grandma," she whispered. Then he whispered, "You raised me right, Grandma." And in that moment, every year, every scar, every silence, it all made sense. I smiled through the tears, because I had lived to see the harvest, and love, at last, had remembered me. "You kept your promise, Jake," I whispered inwardly. "You kept your promise." Lizelle joined us. "Grandma," she said, voice warm, "we will care for you and our baby too." She gently took my hand, placing my hand on her belly with a smile, and we stood as 3 generations linked. Grandmother, grandson, wife. The photographer snapped a photo of us, arms linked, roses at our feet. Smiles gentle, and truth settled in our bones. Later, in the quiet corner of the ballroom, I reflected. My life had been shattered and rebuilt, and tonight, while the music played and people danced, I felt the completion of something profound. I had fought for dignity, for safety, for justice. But tonight, I was here to celebrate the future. Love, family, renewed trust. The locket glinted against my dress, Jake's promise held within. As the moon rose outside, I took a slow walk on the veranda. Lizelle and Jake joined me, wrapped in a blanket. The music was distant, but laughter floated in the night air. Lizelle leaned her head against my shoulder. Jake placed his hand on mine. "Thank you," they said quietly. I looked at them, bright eyes full of the next generation's hope, and felt peace. More than anything I had earned. This was worth it. I closed my eyes and exhaled. A life reclaimed, a legacy passed forward. I whispered, not loud, but clear, "I love you both. Thank you for letting me walk beside you." They smiled and squeezed my hands. Under the moonlight, 3 generations stood connected, ready for tomorrow, and I, at 90, realized I was still walking, not alone, with hope in my heart, with family in my arms, and with love that continues to bloom. If this story stirred something in your heart, if it reminded you of your own quiet strength, your buried wounds, or the justice that still waits to be claimed, then I invite you to stay a little longer, because there are more truths like this one. More women who never shouted, but who never forgot. More grandmothers who were dismissed until the day they stood up and were heard. If you believe in the power of memory, of dignity, of stories that refuse to die, then please, subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Here, silence finds its voice, and wisdom, no matter how old, never grows quiet.